Life is the Dhamma. The Dhamma is life. You only have to look deeply enough into it until you can see what it is. What you take that isn't given only lasts a while. Sometimes we govern our lives by the power of our will. Individually, as a group, we organize ourselves around the power of that. Our capacity to display ourselves in such a way that we get what we want. This is karma. Occasionally we choose to display ourselves virtuously. We accept what comes to us naturally as a result of abiding by or resting upon our commitment to virtue. The Dhamma only flourishes in a time when our lives are governed by the power of virtue. The Dhamma wanes in a time when our lives are governed by the power of our will. And when you pursue willfully your desire, eventually you consume yourself in that pursuit. You know, one of the precepts, one of the 5 precepts that the Buddha suggests that we as lay people uphold for our well-being while we are not free from suffering is to not take what is not given. If you do, then eventually you consume yourself in the pursuit of your desire. That is a natural law. There's an awful lot of willful striving going on out there. You can't fight karma as an act of will. You know, you can't willfully let go. Those two things are in opposition of each other. I seem to remember that book that got very famous and popular not long ago called The Secret. I dare say many of you have even read it. In which it was suggested that if you want something strongly enough, and you concentrate strongly enough on getting it, you will get it. Yes, well, that's the power of will. Now, the life of us folk, us humans, is driven by that power indeed. But everything else on this planet is not. And when you develop the capacity to impose your will upon another, you become the cause of great suffering. When governance and the choices that we make are driven by our desire to impose our will upon that which is around us for the purposes of acquiring what we want, it is a certainty that consciousness will degenerate and the quality of life degenerates with it. It's a natural law. It's almost become our instinct to approach things like this. You know, this idea of our personal freedom and our entitlement, you know, doesn't take account of our need to be accountable for ourselves. The suggestion that we are accountable entirely for ourselves upsets us greatly when we cannot see the cause for many of the things that we witness going on around us. You know, life is deep and profound and extraordinary, and if you don't understand it, then the only guidance that I would give is to live in absolute reverence and awe of it and profound respect, and do not expect it to be bent to your will. You can't just have what you want. You know, if you could see how long it takes to come to a fortunate life like this, you would understand that you can't just have what you want. And in the same way, you can't just take what you want. You can't free yourself from suffering just because you are tired of suffering and you want to be free. So, you know, it's challenging coming to a deep understanding of the way of things. It challenges us greatly because it is our assumption, it is our instinct that life is driven by our personal will, and should be. And that all we need to do is to try and behave properly. But we don't know how to behave properly. The power of our desire is much stronger than our willingness to behave ourselves properly. So it is always a certainty that when we surrender to the power of our willful desire, eventually the quality of our life degenerates. It's the way of things. This is what the Buddha calls samsara. So what guidance do I give? I can see that you are still very, of course, attached to this extraordinary human life. It's very rare and it's very precious. You don't want to have to let go. If you weren't experiencing suffering, it wouldn't occur to you that you might need to. I suppose it all comes down to that which I've just said. There are times when life is governed, organized, galvanized around and driven by the willful pursuit of our desire. You're in that life now. There are times when life is driven solely by the upholding of virtue and the longing to express love. We forget that when we get intoxicated with the pursuit of our desires. You know, it's a strange thing that the more intelligent we become, the more prone to that intoxication we get, because the more capable we are of pursuing our desires and hopefully achieving the object of it. When we aren't or don't have within us the capacity to take what isn't given, we do not fall so easily into such a way. And we are much more likely to uphold our virtue and restrain ourselves. This is samsara, you know. We become complacent in our good fortune. We forget how easy it is to come to suffering, even though there is suffering everywhere to be seen. Somehow, instinctively, we come to the conclusion, but that is not my suffering. I might feel great compassion and pity for those who are suffering far more than I. I don't understand how it could be that way. But me and my good fortune shall pursue, to the best of my ability, the things that I want. Because you can. It's only when you choose not to, even though you can, when you actually choose for yourself to stop taking, you start to free yourself from that process which inevitably consumes itself. it is very hard to resist the pull of that which I want. And not understanding the process by which it really comes about, all we can see is that if I try hard enough, I might get it. But that is not the natural way of things. Everything comes into being. It does not come into being willfully. It is a pure expression of a natural process and a deep intelligence. So if you want the best things or the highest things to come to you in a way that you will actually reach a state of peace when they do come, let them come to you through not taking them because you can, but let them come to you because it is an expression of the natural way of things. That may take a lot longer, but when you do come to that place where you hold within you, or you feel within you, that which you long for, you won't live in the fear of it disappearing if you let go the grip of your attachment. But if you take what you want willfully, because you can, you will go to bed at night in the fear of losing it on account of not being able to sustain your attachment or hold on to it willfully, and eventually you'll be too exhausted to uphold it anyway. So what you take that isn't given only lasts a while. And you never find any solace in the acquisition of it because of the knowledge that it's only going to last for a while, and you know that you cannot uphold or bend things endlessly to your will. You know, this battle goes on, and there are times when virtue prevails and we live in peace. We get on with each other and there is little conflict and strife. And there are times when the power of will prevails over the power of virtue, and we live in conflict and we do not get on and we compete with each other, and there is much suffering. You can't willfully fight karma. You can't. So the whole path is a path of letting go, a path of surrender to the grip of your personal will that keeps things in a state of tension that eventually becomes unbearable. Many of you as householders will say, but I can't let go because we've made choices that make us committed to things that we have to uphold. Well, fair enough. You have to uphold your duties and your responsibilities that are born of choices made in the past. Whether that's the result of borrowing money to build your house, or whether that's the result of raising children that are still in your care, or the fact that you employ people whose well-being you are responsible for. These things cannot just be given up. These duties and responsibilities need to be fulfilled before you're free of them. Now, you live in the throes of a life that is highly galvanized around the willful pursuit of what we want. I don't know what to say about that. I'm also in the same position as you. And working out for myself whether you live within that context and do your best, or whether you remove yourself from it and try something else somewhere else. And look for a place where life is organized around virtue and the upholding of it. Or you start yourself one person at a time, small groups of you gathering together and making that commitment, and you sow new seeds that bring sweet fruit sometime in the future, and you set an example by which others might follow. You know, I think one of the reasons the Dharma does not flourish now is because at some part of us, we feel ashamed of the fact that once we realize what's asked of us, others might think in some way we've copped out. Or we might not meet with approval if we were to suggest that we were going to end the pursuit, willfully pursuit of our desire, and just accept what life brings to us in a more even and balanced way. It's hard. We live in a world whereby we compare ourselves to each other. We don't compare ourselves in terms of our virtue. We compare ourselves in terms of our display. And so, you know, I realize that it takes great courage when it's not what people are doing, to just make that decision to align your life around that basic principle of unwillingness to harm yourself or others in the pursuit of what you want. But it isn't a cop-out, my friends. It's a very courageous gesture. And each one of you that does it, and if you stand upon it, you will shine a light that will, in some way, reflect in that part of others, that part of them that they might have forgotten. If you do it with enough conviction, you might start to remind them that they also long for something more than they are currently pursuing. You know, in an age of degeneration, you know, it is hardest for those who step first upon the path. Of course it is. Many times the longing to do so will arise in you, and many times you will turn back feeling unsupported, alone, or even criticized, or lacking the courage or conviction or faith that you can do that. But keep trying. If it's come to you at some point in your life, an aspiration to align yourself around what you know that I'm talking about, then don't give it up. Because there's no greater sense of woe knowing that a fire lit in our heart and a longing to live that way, and then we didn't. You know, a little part of you dies slowly each day when you do not follow that conviction. So, you know, perhaps to give you some inspiration, I don't know what your personal understanding or belief might be about whatever it is we might call God. But let me tell you something, my friends. That is not an expression of random processes going on out there. It is highly intelligent, and it is an expression of a profound love. And everything expresses itself as that, or expresses itself as not knowing that. The only reason human beings express themselves the way they do is because they've forgotten what that is. Well, if you have forgotten, Try and remember. The ground within which everything is coming into being effortlessly, blissfully, perfectly, is the most profound love. You can call it what you like. You know, if one day your meditation reaches a point where your mind does come to cessation and you rest only in that awareness that remains, you'll recognize that there is something there. And you'll know that it's love. Now, I'm not going to say more than that at this stage about where that might come from. First of all, I suggest that you try to allow yourself to be touched by it. And then you can develop your own relationship with it. But do not assume that it's not there. Because when you assume that that is not there, then you come to the conclusion that your life needs to be driven by the willful pursuit of what you want. The only thing that stands stronger than the will of a person in pursuit of what they want is another who stands utterly upon their commitment to virtue and an unwillingness to harm themselves or others. Have no doubt, my friend, that that light shines brighter. You only need to stand upon it and live by it, and you will fare well, even if you suffer for a while. So don't be afraid. Life is the Dhamma. The Dhamma is life. You only have to look deeply enough into it till you can see what it is.